Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, April 25th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at Joe Biden's potential VP picks for the 2020 presidential election. Now, I know I already made a video about this, but we are getting closer to Joe Biden putting out his selection panel for the people that are going to decide his eventual Democratic vice presidential nominee. And I thought that this was really interesting. I looked at my video from 2017. This is my first ever election night with Joe Biden. And I actually considered Senator Kamala Harris at the time in 2017 to be the eventual vice presidential nominee. And I honestly think that is crazy in hindsight. I chose her for a number of reasons, mainly because she was a notable figure and I didn't think that she was going to win the nomination. And, who better to counteract an old white male? Well, you choose a young African-American female vice presidential candidate. But if she does end up being the nominee, I want to say that I called it 3 years ago, but that's besides the point. Today, we're going to focus on who actually will be the vice presidential nominee and who I think is the best pick for Joe Biden. So let's take a look at the predicted race. This is essentially where all of the money in an election market goes to as to who believes will be the VP nominee. At the top is Senator Harris, then Senator Klobuchar, Senator Warren, and then Stacey Abrams, who actually is running her own bit of a campaign for vice president. If you've seen her name in the news recently, it's mainly because she's being so outspoken about wanting to be Joe Biden's vice presidential nominee. In fact, she declared herself the best vice presidential candidate for the VP nom for Joe Biden's campaign. Now, whether or not she's even being considered, considering the fact that she is campaigning for it without direction from the Biden campaign, it doesn't necessarily spell out good news for her, but it is interesting that she is saying that on the national front. Elizabeth Warren said that she would be the nominee for VP. She was asked on a CNN interview. And a number of these other people, Gretchen Whitmer, said she was not going to be the VP nom. She said that in an interview, but again, things definitely can change considering that Joe Biden hasn't even chosen his running mate yet. Kathleen Cortez Masto, Michelle Obama, Tammy Duckworth, and there's a number of other people on here. Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, Hillary Clinton, that's interesting. Michelle, I think it's Lujan Grisham. She's a New Mexico governor. I think she was first elected in 2018, so she was part of the blue wave back then. Susan Rice is definitely a notable one, and the rest are pretty much men that don't really have a chance considering Biden said he would choose a woman. CNN, Chris, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Saliza, I'm assuming, but he has ranked his top 10 picks for VP, and I'm going to go through them and talk about the electability issues and overall who I genuinely believe it will be. So I know, again, I had made a video on this before, but this is just a little bit more refined considering that on May 1st, we will know who's going to be choosing the Democratic VP nom for 2020. So again, Michelle Lujan Grisham, she's the New Mexico governor. She served in the House of Representatives. She helps out Latino voters. And if you actually take a look at some of the polling data, I think there's this new poll out that showed 65% of Latino voters would be way more inclined to vote for Joe Biden if she was the VP nominee. Now, the Latino vote is crucial in states such as Colorado and New Mexico and Arizona and Nevada. So if Joe Biden's main focus is locking down those states, by all means, he should 100% choose a Latina VP. But at the same time, realistically, those states are probably already going to go to the Democrats. Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, these are Democratic states. Arizona may be the only one that could be tipped by a VP nominee, but I'm not so sure that choosing Latino VP is the best move for the Biden campaign to counteract what he cannot make up for. Stacey Abrams has changed a lot since her 2018 governor bid. Stacey Abrams, she definitely seems a little bit different in terms of the way that she looks at politics. She seems a lot more corporate than she was before. Partially that's because she has gotten a lot of offers that she otherwise wouldn't have if she hadn't had a notable name for herself prior to 2018. But she comes from Georgia. She would help Joe Biden, but realistically, the Democrats aren't winning Georgia. Even if they choose Stacey Abrams, you can't necessarily counteract the Republican base in Georgia. Regardless of how many African-American voters you bring out, there probably in 2020 won't be enough with increased turnout on both sides to overcome that Republican barrier. Now, I know Hillary Clinton narrowly lost Georgia. Realistically, I don't think Stacey Abrams will be the nominee, but it could be interesting. I mean, she is an African-American woman who really could counteract Joe Biden's deficits in terms of his support. But then again, Joe Biden does have a pretty strong support amongst African-American voters already. It would just only further his increased turnout in states such as North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Val Demings from the state of Florida, again, I genuinely don't think that Florida is going to be the prime target for the Democrats in 2020. Realistically, I don't think that he's going to choose Val Demings. Sure, she has a notable name for herself, but honestly, she only has recently come into popularity nationwide, and not like 2018 recently, like last year. So I don't think it's going to be her. Tammy Baldwin, I could understand, but also you're choosing a white woman from an area that Joe Biden pretty much already has locked down in Wisconsin. Sure, it's going to be the closest state, but realistically, if you choose her, you're probably not going to win in any other areas except for the Rust Belt. Now, I know that's the only area that the Democrats need to win in, but when you're going in past the Trump presidency, a lot of these Democrats are looking for a mandate to actually get things done in the United States Senate and the United States House. If you barely win an election, the country's still in turmoil as to who they genuinely support, and it's going to be hard to say that you're a popular president when you win by 18 or 8 electoral votes over 270, which is exactly what winning the Rust Belt would do for the Democrats. Tammy Duckworth, I think she is interesting. She would be a notable pick. First of all, I think she was well known before, I guess, this whole VP. I mean, she definitely was. But I think that she actually is a very much a top contender for the VP pick. We're talking about a veteran who has a number of stories that could definitely help the campaign, and just the fact that you're choosing a female veteran would 100% help out with a couple of those Republicans that are on the edge, that are anti-Trump, but don't really think that Joe Biden would be looking out for them in the White House. You take someone who's actually fought in military combat, and that's someone that would be very much approved of by Republicans that are, I guess, bipartisan in that aspect. They would love Tammy Duckworth. And she is coming from a white working class type area. She doesn't come from a swing state herself. She's a senator from Illinois, but she is still very notable in the terms of what she could do for the area itself. The region of the Rust Belt would be solidified with Tammy Baldwin or Tammy Duckworth, a number of those Democrats. But then again, it comes down to that issue. The Democrats don't need the Rust Belt super solidified. Yes, they need it solidified, but they have that with Vice President Biden. He's 20% more approved of than Hillary Clinton was at this point in the race. He won in primaries. Hillary Clinton lost. He's driven up turnout in areas that previously did not vote in large margins, specifically the African American regions that lead Democrats to victory, led Al Gore to victory in those states, led John Kerry to victory in those states, led Barack Obama to victory in those states, and did not lead Hillary Clinton to victory because they didn't turn out to vote in numbers that they needed to. But in 2020, that's probably going to happen. There is no essential need for them to double down on the Rust Belt. Okay, winning by 1% is the same as winning by 10% when it comes down to the Electoral College. So realistically, it's not going to matter as long as that state, Michigan, or that state, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania, is filled in blue on the electoral map on Election Day. Elizabeth Warren, I think that's a very interesting choice. Generally do not think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren, mainly because she waited so long to endorse Vice President Biden, but then again, he practically endorsed her after she dropped out of the race. Point after point after point, Barack Obama and Joe Biden both came out in support of Elizabeth Warren's plans and said she was very prepared. So if we talk about someone who's prepared to take over if Joe Biden does end up leaving office early, whether it be resignation or, God forbid, anything else for him, Elizabeth Warren definitely would be ready, but I don't think that her reluctance to endorse Biden right away would have helped this. Even right after the primary, Sanders endorsed Biden before Elizabeth Warren did. So I think that it's going to be interesting. She's pretty much a progressive pick if they had to appease the progressive base. But then again, 85% of Sanders supporters said that they were going to vote for Biden. So I don't think that's going to be the pressing, issue. Catherine Cortez Masto, again, someone who could relate with Latino voters. She's from Nevada, an area that doesn't necessarily need to be solidified. Again, going to be a Democratic state regardless. Realistically, she wouldn't be the best fit because she doesn't match up to what Joe Biden is lacking in. I generally think that it should be an African-American woman that would be, breaking two barriers at once. And honestly, I think America might be ready for that. And although in 2016, Hillary Clinton did lose due to a number of reasons, it may have seemed like America wasn't ready to elect a woman to VP or presidential spot. But I think if Joe Biden is leading the way this time around, I think they'll definitely vote for a candidate like that. But I honestly think in order to make up for Joe Biden being the stereotypical old white man that a lot of the Democrats don't like that about President Trump or any other of the former presidents, you're going to need an African-American woman. Amy Klobuchar, she would be interesting. Again, doubling down on the Rust Belt may not be the best thing, and she also does have a shaky history about how she treats her staff. All of those things that came out in the Democratic primary that was not picked up by the news media because she wasn't too notable of a candidate at the time, I think that'll all come to light and really push her away from being the VP nom. But the same thing can be said for Kamala Harris, but I'll get to that in a second. Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan governor, she said she was not going to be the nominee for VP, but she has had firm opposition to President Trump. Enough to make her name known nationwide. Okay, when you take candidates like Tammy Baldwin and Tammy Duckworth and Amy Klobuchar, I mean, Klobuchar is probably the best known out of all of them, but after this whole coronavirus situation, Gretchen Whitmer is a name that is remembered in people's minds. I think she's probably the only one from the Rust Belt that the Biden campaign could actually be sure could win voters in other areas because of her governing response in the state of Michigan being so well known. The rest of those candidates are senators. They don't have as much of a direct impact on their states as a governor would, but then again, there comes that issue where she's a white woman, and when you're appealing to a demographic that may not be as inclined to vote as if it was Barack Obama on the ballot, despite Joe Biden being his VP, you're probably going to still want to make up for that. Now, Kamala Harris is number one. This makes sense. Sure, she's from California. I'm not saying she's going to provide an electoral college advantage on the West Coast, but when you bring it down to states such as North Carolina and Georgia, and bringing out voters in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia, you need African-American voters at that point. These are predominantly African-American districts. These are predominantly African-American cities. And though Kamala Harris isn't necessarily African-American, she would be the first black female vice president. And that would be breaking a number of barriers. And she would also counteract, again, Joe Biden's, faults and I guess just his demographics. But then again, it doesn't necessarily reflect the full-on Democratic Party. She did have early criticism about Joe Biden, though. That is the one thing I'm worried about for Joe Biden if he does pick Kamala Harris, because that could be easily played in an ad. Kamala Harris's voice against her own presidential candidate. Now, that could be dispelled over a series of campaign events talking about it was just the Democratic primary, But that's one of the main reasons why, Secretary Hillary Clinton wasn't chosen as Obama's VP in 2008. Despite that, sure, unifying the ticket, a lot of Clinton voters voted for John McCain. Keep that in mind. She wasn't the right candidate because that would have hurt Obama more. Now, I don't think that's going to happen with Harris, considering she exited the race before the Iowa caucus, so no necessarily electoral or Democratic primary damage was done in terms of delegate counts and vote counts, but, voice ads are definitely going to hit the waves as soon as he chooses her as the VP, if he actually does. So on Wikipedia, they do have a number of senators that are being discussed. I don't think Kirsten Gillibrand will be it. Kirsten Sinema's too recent, and they want her in the United States Senate. So Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire, Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Tammy Duckworth, all these people that we talked about before. A couple of U.S. representatives. Realistically, I don't think it'll be a U.S. representative. A number of these people are freshmen, so they probably won't be picked just because of how little experience they have, and a lot of people are going to want someone who can take over pretty quickly. If you look at federal executive branch officials, I mean, Susan Rice definitely would make sense. Sally Yates makes sense as well. Governors, that would be something that could definitely help because of this whole coronavirus situation. But then again, the only realistic one on here is Gretchen Whitmer. And then other individuals, Stacey Abrams, Michelle Obama, definitely not. Stacey Abrams probably one of the, even though I don't think it'll be her, I think she's probably the most realistic out of these three. But just taking a look at this list and where the money is going, a lot of people are betting that Senator Harris is going to be it. I honestly hope that happens just because of how long ago that video has been up, and I guess how long ago I predicted that if Harris is the VP nom. But I definitely think it'll come down to pretty much within these top five. Again, Tammy Baldwin recently came into discussion for the VP nom, Tammy Duckworth as well, but my money right now is on Senator Harris. If things do come out and things start to change, as I start to see leaks on things like Twitter, New York Times, whoever may leak it or get the news story first, I'll definitely be able to share it with you guys because this VP race is going to be very interesting. But electorally, I do think that choosing an African-American woman would be the best choice for, or a black woman would be the best choice for Joe Biden. And in that case, it would be Senator Kamala Harris. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.